Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. Welcome to my channel. I'm a meteorologist in the Raleigh area, and I've been a meteorologist for over 20 years, been on YouTube since the end of last year. And if you have been watching during Hurricane Idalia, you will see that for the most part, the storm has done what was expected. It did move a little bit quicker yesterday, weakened a little bit quicker upon landfall, but still a very impactful storm for the southeastern United States. Lots of folks without power, schools canceled for today in many places in the Carolinas, down into Florida. And the good news is that Idalia is going to be moving away from the eastern United States here in the next 12 to 24 hours. Still some rough weather this morning, though, in eastern North Carolina. The bad news is that I don't think we're done with Idalia just yet. The system is going to move into an area of weaker steering by the time it gets close to Bermuda over the weekend, and we are probably going to be watching her quite a bit more here next week. Not only that, but we continue to see an active phase of the tropics, and additional storms are going to be in the forecast here, both in the Atlantic as well as in the Western Pacific. So we are definitely at the prime part here of our hurricane season. More storms are expected in the coming days. So I'm going to kind of take a pick at where I think things are going to go. And I will caution you guys, obviously, forecast models do a pretty decent job once we get within about 4 or 5 days of where storms are going to pop up, but not always. And the ones that unfortunately are the toughest to predict are the ones closest to the United States due to the warm waters that we have. So let's take a look here at what we're going to be expecting here the next week. The good news is the majority of the action is out in the central and eastern Atlantic. Nothing expected in the Caribbean or Gulf that I believe for the next few days. Now, Idalia is going to head towards Bermuda over the weekend following the wake of Hurricane Franklin, which will continue to accelerate away from Bermuda and away from Atlantic Canada. And it's going to go over some cooler water left behind Franklin, so it does not have a very good chance of re-strengthening much. It could try to sneak back up closer to Category 1 hurricane strength, but we're not going to see another Category 3 or 4 storm. The bad news is that once it gets to Bermuda, there are now some trends that try to pull it back towards the northwest or even towards the west. One or two models still trying to show it come back towards the Bahamas. I'm starting to rule out that scenario, but it's not completely impossible. And unfortunately, our uncertainty level climbs quite a bit here next week. We're in great shape through Labor Day weekend. If you're headed to the beaches, there will still be some rip currents and rough surf due to our storms. But overall, some really nice weather coming up here for most of us, except for Central Florida and eventually the Gulf Coast, which is actually going to be seeing a blessing from this rain. It's going to cut back on the heat wave that we've been in for pretty much the entire month of August, even before then for a lot of you. Farther out in the Atlantic, we do now have Tropical Storm Jose, no threat to land. Not really a waste of a name, I'll show you. It's actually done pretty well for itself. And then the potential to see 2 more storms forming here over the weekend and especially next week. But the good news is that those are way off in the Atlantic. This is what's called the Madden-Julian Oscillation. It shows where things cycle, where we see more cloud and storm development, and it cycles along through the United States, through both the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. And over on this side is a westerly phase. The westerly phase is what's favored more action here in the Gulf of Mexico and the Western Atlantic. We've been in that westerly phase 1 and 2. Now we are going to see a shift into an easterly phase, and what that's going to do is cut off the possibility of really any kind of major action in the Gulf here or in the Caribbean over the next few days. All that Atlantic action is going to be out in the central and eastern Atlantic. At least we believe so. And this forecast certainly can shift, but we are seeing a shift in the overall source regions of where our next few storms are likely to be coming from. You can see right here, the map is pretty busy. We have Idalia moving away from North Carolina, still impacting coastal sections this morning. Hurricane Franklin is going to slowly weaken, still a powerful storm, but moving quickly away from Bermuda. Now we have a new tropical storm, Jose, which may try to strengthen a little bit here for just a day before it hits more unfavorable weather. Gert, can we all just have a laugh? Gert was this piece of dump little storm that somehow the remains of it have managed to sneak in behind Franklin and Jose. And believe it or not, there's a small window where this could try to squeeze out a depression or storm again. It's going to keep the name Gert. We're not going to see a waste of another name, but it is still around. And then our next disturbance is looking more and more likely like it will develop into an East Atlantic storm. And that is what we'll be keeping an eye on. Here's a look at Zoom Earth. I love this site. You can see how busy things are in the Western Atlantic with Tropical Storm Idalia now beginning to pull away. It's starting to lose some tropical characteristics as it merges with a front, but it should separate from that front by the time it gets out here towards Bermuda over the weekend and still will remain tropical, but not as strong. Here's Hurricane Franklin down to Category 2, should be a Category 1 later today, and that will accelerate and pass well east of Newfoundland. Here's new Tropical Storm Jose, which may briefly intensify here today and then should weaken and diminish by the weekend in the north central Atlantic, which has been a hot spot lately. Here's the remains of Gert trying to make a comeback here. A lot of low clouds, not a lot of high clouds. And then we've got our next area to watch. This is Invest 94L. They're running models on it. It's over the Cape Verdes. It is likely to turn away to the north and east. And then behind that, another wave I'll be watching for you all next week. This is the water vapor image. You can see there's a ton of dry air wrapping in behind Idalia. The storm has actually been on a faster track than all the models were showing. That allowed it to weaken a little bit more quickly last night as it moved through the Carolinas. Still a lot of wind on the backside of the storm due to a jet streak, just stronger winds aloft that have propelled this system to produce some pretty nasty wind on the backside. On the front side, we had tornado warnings. There actually was a tornado in Dorchester County, South Carolina that caused some damage yesterday. A lot of high surf, a lot of coastal flooding and storm surge in the Charleston Harbor area. Charleston, South Carolina, very vulnerable to surge, but certainly was very rough last night. That will start quieting down today. We're still going to have rough surf, though, here in eastern parts of North Carolina, especially in the Sounds, through the morning hours. But the good news is that this storm, as quickly as it developed, has already fizzled quickly. It's still a strong storm in the Carolinas, but it is definitely not what it was yesterday. Here's Franklin. It is getting a little bit of wind shear from the outflow here. I'm going to show that to you here. Let me pull my pen up for you guys. See this fast flow aloft coming in from the west? That is actually causing some wind shear over Franklin as he pulls away from Bermuda right in here. But he is going to accelerate here, get picked up by a trough here. That's going to swing it east-northeastward, and it'll get a kick in the butt from Idalia, but it is going to continue to weaken slowly. Here's the remains of Gert still circulating over here to the southeast of Franklin. And then here's new Tropical Storm Jose. It is sheared, but it is developing into at least a storm that has some potential to survive for a couple of days. After that, it's going to hit the wake left behind Franklin, and it'll have some wind shear from Gert. Gert's kind of getting squeezed between Franklin and Jose. I don't think it's going to make a comeback, but there is always that chance. Other than that, you see the Caribbean is really quiet here. We've got a ridge of high pressure in place, some monsoonal moisture hitting the Yucatan, nothing that'll develop. The Gulf is looking pretty quiet as well, but we do have a front that is right behind Franklin here. You can kind of see this cold front here, and that is going to stall over central Florida and be the focus for some heavier showers and storms the next couple of days. So we are going to get some, I don't want to call it welcome rain, but I know we need some more rain in Florida. South of the area that got hit by Idalia yesterday. And so we're going to see that rain here over central Florida the next few days. And I really do hope and think and believe we're going to see some of that coming back into the central and western Gulf states here in the coming days as well. Maybe some locally heavy tropical rains with that. I got a lot of tabs up. I know you guys have been joking with me about it, but we got a lot to look at here. So the good news here, the Western Atlantic has cooled in the wake of Franklin. And so as Idalia moves into this area, the waters are cooler. It's going to struggle to strengthen. It may hold its own, but it's going to struggle to strengthen. The Gulf and the Caribbean are still very warm, but we're not in a phase to see enhanced storm development in here. So for the time being, quiet, but those waters stay warm. That means we're not necessarily done for the entire season. We still have September and October, even early November to go in here. So we're keeping an eye very closely on these water temperatures. And then let's take a look here at Idalia. Here is the satellite image. You can see it's starting to look a little bit extra tropical, but it still is tropical. The center of the storm is actually kind of down in here a little bit, and a lot of the higher clouds are racing off to the north and east. Things are already quieting down here in Raleigh, but we are getting some strong winds kind of on the backside here out of the west. I will show you this radar here from Radar Omega. You can see this projected path here. And you can see there's still a circulation just off the coast from Wilmington that is going to track eastward and pass south of the Outer Banks and Emerald Isle and Beaufort and Atlantic Beach and those areas. But we still see a lot of rain impacting eastern North Carolina and a lot of rough surf here in down eastern parts of North Carolina. So these areas are going to still get battered here, even though where I live here in Raleigh-Garner, things are now beginning to quiet down. We still have some stronger wind. Schools are closed out of an abundance of caution. I know a lot of people are freaking out about that here in the Carolinas. I will say that I believe the main reason for the schools being closed is that a lot of them don't have generators. And because winds will be strong during the bus rides this morning, they don't want buses out in 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. So out of an abundance of caution, schools are closed, even though this storm is largely over. So it's a safety concern for this morning's bus routes. That's really all it is in this area in North Carolina. So even though the storm is pretty much winding down, it's going to be windy and turning cooler and more comfortable as the day wears on. And we should actually have a really nice kind of fall-like afternoon here back in the Carolinas. So enjoy it while you can, because it's not going to last that way for a whole lot longer. It's going to heat back up this weekend. Wind gusts on the HRRR model, you can see potentially gusts over 40 miles per hour here in eastern North Carolina. And those winds will actually get stronger as we get to about 11 a.m. today. Gusts could reach 50 miles per hour here across the Sounds and around Cape Lookout and Cape Hatteras, and potentially even as high as 65 miles per hour around Hatteras, and maybe even close to hurricane force here across the near coastal waters, Frying Pan Shoals, for example. And that would be around and just after lunchtime. So a lot of this is the pressure gradient in the wake of Tropical Storm Idalia. Part of it as well is jet stream dynamics and a strong front pushing this system off the coast. We've got that tighter pressure gradient, the air is flowing faster, that's why we have the stronger wind. But all in all, this will be winding down here by this afternoon. This morning, we'll continue to have some high storm surge, 2 to 4 feet from Beaufort Inland to Ocracoke, 1 to 3 feet up to Duck. The Sounds and rivers could have 2 to 4 feet, and all the way down to Cape Fear and Bald Head Island, 1 to 3 foot storm surge through this morning, and then gradually letting up later today. Additional rainfall totals could be as high as 5 inches in Hatteras, 2 inches in Duck, 2 inches in Beaufort, Morehead City, 1 inch in New Bern, and close to an inch in Wilmington. Notice, though, across Florida, we have additional rain expected here today and tonight. Amounts generally 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches. Then that moisture starts creeping back up into western Florida, into the central Gulf states, where I know we could use a little bit of rain. We could see a couple of inches here Friday into Saturday. And then if you are in southern Louisiana and southeastern Texas, there is some hope that we see more moisture building back around Labor Day into the beginning of next week. Not necessarily anything organized tropics-wise, but a stalled front that we'll keep an eye on, but that will bring some relief from the record drought and record heat we've been dealing with this entire month. You see where we're not going to get anything? Basically the Midwest on into the Northeast, a beautiful weekend. Temperatures are nice for now. They are going to start heating up next week, and we have another wave of heat hitting the Corn Belt and areas eastward here into next week. All right, so here's a look at flooding from Idalia. Still a moderate chance over eastern parts of North Carolina, a slight risk back to the east of Raleigh, places like I-95, Wilson, Goldsboro, those areas. Here you can see the forecast track, and it's moving pretty quickly. Still tropical storm force winds over down eastern parts of North Carolina. Tropical storm warning for the entire North Carolina coast and down to the upper coast of South Carolina. That should probably be dropped for South Carolina here later this morning. It may continue into the afternoon over down eastern North Carolina and the Outer Banks. That storm will be moving away, though, by tonight. Winds will gradually calm by this evening, and it should be a much nicer night tonight as the wind flow goes well offshore here, brings some cooler air down. Now, we do have some uncertain future here, and I'm not sure exactly how this is going to play out. If you saw me a few days ago and you noticed that I was bringing up the GFS and a lot of associated models trying to push things back towards the Bahamas, that was very true. I did not lie to you guys, but fortunately, that is looking like a much less likely scenario now. So I think the east coast of Florida, you still need to watch it, but I think you're probably going to be okay at this point. Unfortunately, Bermuda is not going to be okay. This storm is expected to go right over Bermuda, and we just had tropical storm conditions yesterday with Hurricane Franklin. As we get into Saturday night and Sunday, we could see that once again, and a slow-moving storm which could bring a lot of rain up to Bermuda. This will probably not become a hurricane again for the next 5-6 days as the waters have cooled off quite a bit behind Franklin. But it still could be a decent-sized storm, 50, 60, 65 miles per hour. Now, as we get into the early part of next week around Labor Day, we see some uncertainty as the storm is going to try to turn back and actually make a counterclockwise loop. 2 days ago, 3 days ago, it was showing a clockwise loop in here, now a counterclockwise loop. A lot of that is going to be due to the strength of a high-pressure ridge that's going to build eastward into New England and Atlantic Canada. and what I believe will be a cutoff low that comes in under that ridge, a weakness that cuts off. And those cutoff lows are just like the biggest pain in the butt to try to forecast. I've done this for years, and once they get down there, the certainty level drops quite a bit. You can see today's models are now more leaning back towards a westward turn. This does not mean a hurricane is going to strike the northeast. It just means we are going to have an uncertain path of a storm that could kind of linger out in this direction here as we get towards the second part of next week after Labor Day. If you are celebrating Labor Day with a 3-day weekend at the beaches, you're going to be okay other than the rough surf. This is not going to impact you that quickly, but as we get later into next week, we do have to keep an eye on that. You can see there are model guidance solutions which weaken the system significantly to a lower end tropical storm and then begin to show at least a little bit more intensification over the weekend as it gets towards Bermuda. And, you know, we have to keep an eye on things here. There is certainly warm water. The Gulf Stream between Bermuda and the East Coast is warm. That area has not been touched yet by a hurricane or a tropical storm, and we do need to watch it. We are in the warmest time of the year here, end of August, early September. So there are certainly some solutions that say hurricane possibility, but not likely at this point. I want to show you the upper level pattern. This is weatherbell.com. And you can see here, big trough moving through Atlantic Canada today and tonight. That is picking up Franklin. And then we've got a region of high pressure behind Franklin and whatever is going to come off the Atlantic. Upper level low here in the Western Gulf of Mexico. And then a region of high pressure building up and over. So Idalia is going to miss this trough and get stuck down in here. You can see here's the trough. It picks up Franklin right over here. Idalia, on the other hand, because this area of high pressure is building in quickly eastward, it's going to get kind of stuck here around the Bermuda area. And what we have to watch is this next trough in here. Sorry for all the drawings here. Let me make this more transparent. So we've got this big region of high pressure here building eastward, and that is going to eventually kind of influence what happens with Idalia. Now, this feature up here moving into Northwest Ontario over the weekend is the wild card in this entire situation. That is likely going to come up and over the ridge. As that ridge strengthens, it is probably going to cut off into an upper low in here, and that is the reason Idalia does not get kicked out this way. We've got a blocking high that'll be in place and an upper low that gets stuck behind it. Unfortunately, because that big block is there, we are not going to see enough eastward progress in Idalia, I don't believe. There's a very small chance it does escape, but right now that's looking very unlikely at this point. And you can see the trough coming off of New England here Sunday into Monday. Everything starts circulating here north of Bermuda. This is Labor Day in the afternoon. And then it does get drawn back due to the strength of this incredibly strong high over Labrador and Quebec here in Canada. So what happens here is that, and let me bring my pen back up for you guys. I know this is a long video, but I appreciate it if you're still with me here because I think this is very interesting, and I think we can get caught up so much in forecast, but we need to see the reason behind all that forecasting. But this region of high pressure is going to be so strong that the steering flow is actually below that high pressure, kind of out of the east a little bit. And what happens there is that we've got kind of a situation where things get stuck in here between Bermuda and the East Coast up in here. So we really do have a lot to watch here towards the middle of next week. Oh, by the way, the next systems are coming in this direction, not a threat, and then this direction, potentially a threat in here. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. But big high over the Gulf of Mexico should shut down any action here closer to Florida and the Western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So some good news there for us, as we have certainly seen our share of bad weather here in the last few weeks. As we move this along, you can see the uncertainty level grows, but this high pressure ridge up in here may allow weakness to pull this north towards Atlantic Canada or New England, or the high pressure could stay in place. And this system is still out here spinning around into the weekend of the 9th and 10th. So we have a lot to watch here. GFS is a little different than the European, as everybody could imagine. These two butt heads all the time. But overall, you see that movement back to the west here towards the middle of next week. And then it gets to a point where this trough is going to try to pick it up and turn it northward. The big question mark is that going to kick it back out into Canada? Is it going to pull it up into New England? Is it even draw it back towards the mid-Atlantic? Again, I really don't know yet. I just think all those scenarios are certainly possible. And then you can see the GFS has a system out here in the central Atlantic, which would be our next system. Here is the ensembles. Here are the ensembles. And a lot of uncertainty once it gets to this point south of Bermuda over in here. That would be on Saturday night and Sunday. That's when things come to a stall here, just south and west of Bermuda, which I believe is right about here, right about here. Tough to see on the map with all the spaghetti on top. But when we get into here, it reaches a point where only one or two ensembles take it back here. I think this is very unlikely to happen. Some of the ensembles take it in this direction, but most of them take it back in this direction. So the greatest uncertainty is going to be in here. And you can see we do have some solutions that have some strengthening happening in this area here off the East Coast. So if you're in New England and Eastern Canada, you definitely need to be paying attention, but it's not time yet to just go all out preparation. We still have a lot of time for this to change. So again, just keep an eye on things at this point. Canadian model says more of a turn back towards New Jersey and the Northeast on some of the ensembles, but a very large spread still. Very well, we could be looking at Atlantic Canada, or we could be looking at something sitting out here and just completely fizzling due to wind shear. The European is in between both. I do like in between. The European did a pretty decent job here with Idalia when it made it towards the Caribbean and Gulf. I have no reason to believe it's not going to do a decent job. But the one thing that I caution you on is that we have solutions kicking it away here. We have solutions pulling it up towards Atlantic Canada, and we have several solutions bringing it into the northeastern coastline, or close to the northeastern coastline, or even North Carolina again. So much more time to keep an eye on things. You can see here's our infrared. Here's Idalia. That's the biggest storm on the map. Franklin is the strongest. We have new Tropical Storm Jose, and we've got the remains of Gert over here. Let's look at Franklin real fast. It is beginning to pull away from Bermuda down in here. Still a Category 2 storm, getting some wind shear out of the west. Still in pretty warm water, so it's got a chance to remain pretty intense for a couple more days, but it will weaken. This is the Bermuda radar, and you can see, let me annotate this for you guys real quick. This is Bermuda over here. The worst weather was last night. The eye is up in here, and things are going to be pulling away in this direction. So conditions should improve on Bermuda as we get through the day today. I know some of y'all are watching for Bermuda, so I wanted to keep you guys posted. But here we see it will stay a hurricane until the weekend, then become extratropical early next week. Next system is new Tropical Storm Jose. It's getting wind sheared here by Franklin and by the remains of Gert, but it is big enough of a system to become a tropical storm. It could still grow a little bit here, some pretty healthy outflow. So I would not be shocked if this became a moderate tropical storm, 50 to 60 mile per hour storm, but it is not a threat to land, going well over the north central Atlantic. And the Hurricane Center, I think, needs to make this a little bit more strong, not just kill it by Friday morning. I think it'll be a little stronger in here, but it should weaken by the time it gets up into here. I don't think it's a Category 1 hurricane, but I do think it could be a moderate or even strong tropical storm by Friday evening, and then weakening and becoming extratropical this weekend. We do have another disturbance to keep an eye on and a wave behind it, both of which models are indicating could develop. Here's a look at 94L. This is just north and west of the Cape Verde, showing a little bit of circulation here. Good news is that it's heading in this direction, will not be a threat to land. The next wave behind it, some models are showing development on it, and with the high pressure ridge building in, this area needs to be watched as it may have a lower latitude than this next future storm. We see the track guidance of 94L, and I'll show you the infrared real quick. Here are the Cape Verdes. It's looking a little bit healthier today. I think it does have a shot at becoming a depression by tomorrow, but it is not going to be a threat to land. Moving northeast and then more than likely recurving towards the Azores. Does have a chance of being a tropical storm. Very unlikely it's a hurricane. The ship's model usually goes stronger than everybody else, but I think a tropical storm. And the next name on the list is Katia, and that was the name that replaced Katrina in 2005, 3 cycles ago. The one after it, I think, could be Lee, so we're going to keep an eye on that one as well. Here's the GFS showing you the future of our systems, and you can see things are very busy here. Look at all these low pressures. Idalia here on Monday morning, Labor Day. This would be the remains of Gert trying to make a comeback. This is Franklin. This is what I think will be Katia. And then behind it, I think we've got Lee over here towards the end of next week. And we're going to have to keep an eye on that system in Bermuda once again. Much uncertainty at that point. If I take this back here, you can see with Idalia, it's definitely going to try to flirt with the Northeast here at the end of the week, or flirt with Canada Friday night and Saturday. This is the GFS. But that is really the only thing I'm concerned about at this point is Idalia. Everything else is heading away. We have to keep an eye on what could be Lee here in the future. The European model, Franklin over here, this is not a tropical system. This is not tropical. This was our next system. This is Jose. This is the remains of Gert. They're just kind of sitting around together. And here's Idalia. And I will show you Idalia on the European, comes very close to Bermuda, doesn't quite get there, and then does hit Bermuda here on Sunday as a tropical storm. You see that pressure's dropping. There's a possibility here it tries to become a hurricane or a strong tropical storm again. And then our big area of high pressure says, you are not getting away here, Idalia. You are going to try to come back around me. And this is showing a Category 1 hurricane on Tuesday and Wednesday. And it is off of Cape Cod here by Thursday and Friday, but then weakening significantly here due to wind shear by the weekend. Oh, by the way, it does develop Katia here very quickly and then kills it very quickly. And then it develops the next wave into Tropical Storm Lee at the end of next week. And that could be our next hurricane to keep an eye on in Bermuda. Keep an eye on it in the Bahamas, and you may want to watch it again here on the East Coast after September 10th. The Pacific is very busy. We've got 3 storms. One of them is an immediate threat to Hong Kong. That is Saola. The next one is severe tropical storm Haikui, and then we've got a new severe tropical storm Kirogi. All of these need to be watched if you're watching from the Pacific. Super Typhoon Saola, now we're reaching sunset here. Fortunately, it missed Taiwan. Unfortunately, I don't think Hong Kong gets let off the hook. It's 160 mile per hour super typhoon, very powerful, but it will start to weaken slowly here today and tonight, and then weaken more significantly near Hong Kong as it moves by there tomorrow night. And Hong Kong could be in very bad shape if this track holds. There's a chance, though, that the system comes a little farther south or a little farther north. It will be weakening and actually looping back, so a significant rain threat here coming for China in the next couple of days. This is severe tropical storm Haikui, and this is unfortunately a potential threat to land coming up here as it moves towards the Yaeyama Islands here over the second part of the weekend. And in fact, it may go right over Ishigaki Island here. And then unfortunately, while Taiwan got fortunate with this typhoon, it may not be as fortunate with the next one. This is showing up as a strong typhoon, Category 3 strength, and then weakening back to Category 2 and eventually 1. But it could come close to the northern part of Taiwan, including Taipei, and then will weaken as it moves into China between Hong Kong and Shanghai later next week. And oh, by the way, that's not it. We've got Tropical Storm Kirogi getting a little bit of wind shear from the west, likely to turn back, and that could threaten the southwestern portion of Japan with some more rain. But fortunately, this is going to be the weakest of the 3 and probably just a low-end tropical storm affecting the island of Kyushu here towards the end of next week. I really appreciate y'all's time. I hope you have a wonderful day. Please consider subscribing to this channel if you are very interested in the tropics, and I hope that you are. And as always, I encourage you, if you are a subscriber or a new follower, to maybe consider becoming a member and joining my channel for $9.99 a month. I will be giving you guys special videos when things quiet down here. We are probably going to look at merchandise now that we're over 10,000 subscribers. Thank you guys, by the way, for getting me past my goal here that I had set for myself at the end of this year. Great to see. I hate to see it, at the expense of Florida, and the Southeast, but obviously I appreciate everybody's time here. And I will say that, it's been a very difficult few weeks in the tropics. I've had a lot going on in my personal life, but I cannot do it all without God. God gives me the glory every day. I give him the glory. He gives me the gift of being able to do this. And just want to encourage everybody else in these difficult times just to love God. He created us. I know a lot of you maybe don't believe that personally, but that's okay. I didn't either until 2013 when I became a Christian, accepted Jesus as my Savior. Mark 12:30, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And I'll just say real quick that for me personally, I did not love God. I did not love life. I did not know my future. But that door opened for me to accept Jesus Christ as my Savior. It's hard not to love God when he loves us through the sacrifice he's made through Jesus Christ. And that is the ability for us to live eternally and have a higher power that will not ever turn its back on us. We may think that God is turning his back on us, but that is actually the devil wanting you to think that. And I will say that turning to God and repenting and praying and talking with God and realizing that we are not perfect, we cannot do it all, but he can. that takes a lot of the pressure off of you. And I just encourage you, if you have any prayer requests, I will be happy to pray over you, pray with you, whatever I can do, because I really do think prayer helps. And we need it right now in the Southeast in Florida, because a lot of you have been hit hard, and my thoughts and prayers are with you. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a blessed day. I'll see you all again tomorrow morning. God bless you.